My boss said it so softly, I almost thought I imagined it. Why won't you look at me? But the weight of those words felt heavier than the rent I couldn't afford, heavier than the sleepless nights, heavier than the truth I had buried so deep inside me that even hope had stopped knocking. I remember the exact moment because the sunlight coming through the office blinds hit the floor in sharp golden lines. Like a cage, I was standing inside. My hands were trembling, not because of her question, but because I knew the answer would change everything. I had been avoiding her eyes for weeks, maybe months, pretending it was just professionalism, just boundaries, just survival. But the truth was far more complicated and far more painful. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Heartfelt Stories. You never know whose life a story might touch. Her name was Meher Adil, and she wasn't just my boss. She was the kind of person who made a room feel warmer just by walking into it. Confident without arrogance, kind without weakness, and sharp enough to see through every lie I tried to hide behind. That was the problem. She saw me, not just the employee who showed up early, stayed late, and never complained, but the man underneath the cracks, the exhaustion, the quiet desperation. And I couldn't afford to be seen. Because I was Armin Qureshi, a single father who measured life in overdue bills and borrowed time. My mornings didn't start with coffee. They started with packing a lunchbox for my 6-year-old son, Zion, making sure his uniform was clean, his shoes polished, and his smile still intact despite the world we were living in. His mother had left when he was barely 2, chasing a life she said she deserved. I didn't blame her anymore. Blame requires energy, and I had none left. Every day was a race. Drop Zion at school, rush to work, pretend everything was fine, then rush back before the daycare penalty kicked in. I lived in constant fear. Fear of losing my job, fear of falling behind, fear that one mistake would collapse the fragile life I had built for my son. Love, romance, even the idea of being seen as a man instead of just a father. Those things belonged to another world, a world I had quietly buried. Meher didn't belong to that world either. She came from strength, but not privilege. I had overheard whispers about how she built herself from nothing, how she fought her way up in a system that rarely gave women a fair chance. Maybe that's why she recognized struggle when she saw it. Maybe that's why she kept trying to get closer. It started with small things, asking if I had eaten, offering to help when I stayed too late, noticing when I looked more tired than usual. Then came the conversations that lingered a little longer than necessary, the questions that went just a little deeper than work required. I could feel it happening, that dangerous shift from professional concern to something more personal, something warmer, something I couldn't allow. So I pulled back. I avoided eye contact. I kept my answers short. I built walls out of silence and routine, because if I let even a crack form, everything I had worked so hard to control would spill out. And I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. But that day, when she asked me why I wouldn't look at her, I realized my silence had started to hurt her. And that was never my intention. I finally lifted my eyes, just for a second. And in that brief moment, I saw something that terrified me more than anything. Understanding mixed with pain. She wasn't just asking a question. She was asking for honesty. And I couldn't lie anymore. I told her the truth. Not in dramatic words, not in a long speech, but in a simple sentence that carried the weight of my entire life. I told her I was a poor single dad, and I couldn't afford to love anyone right now. The room fell silent in a way that felt almost sacred. She didn't respond immediately. She just looked at me, really looked at me, like she was finally seeing the man I'd been hiding. That day changed everything. Not because something romantic happened. Not because my life suddenly became easier, but because for the first time in years, I felt understood without being judged. After that, she stopped trying to push me. She didn't ask personal questions. She didn't linger unnecessarily, but she didn't pull away either. Instead, she showed her care in quieter ways. Flexible deadlines when Zion got sick. A subtle adjustment in my workload during tough weeks. A silent respect for the boundaries I had drawn. And slowly, something inside me began to shift. I started noticing things I had ignored before, the way she stayed late to help others, the way she treated everyone with dignity, the way she carried her own burdens without ever making them someone else's problem. She wasn't trying to fix me. She wasn't trying to save me. She was simply there. And sometimes, that's more powerful than anything else. Months passed, and life didn't magically improve. I still struggled. I still worried. I still counted every rupee. But the heaviness wasn't as suffocating anymore. Because somewhere along the way, I realized that love isn't always about grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it's just about presence, about someone choosing to stand beside you, even when you have nothing to offer in return. One evening, I brought Zion to the office because I had no one to watch him. I was nervous, embarrassed even, but I had no choice. To my surprise, Meher didn't just accept it. She welcomed him. She knelt down to his level, spoke to him with genuine warmth, and within minutes, he was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in days. That moment broke something inside me, not in a painful way, but in a way that made space for something new. Hope. For the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I had been wrong. Maybe love wasn't something I had to earn after fixing my life. Maybe it was something that could exist even in the middle of struggle. Maybe it didn't demand perfection. But fear is a stubborn thing. It doesn't disappear just because hope appears. It lingers, whispering worst-case scenarios, reminding you of everything you could lose. So I stayed cautious, until the day everything almost fell apart. I made a mistake at work. A big one. The kind that could cost a company money, reputation, everything. My chest tightened as I realized what I had done. This was it. The moment I had feared for years. The moment that could take everything away from me and my son. But instead of anger, instead of disappointment, Meher did something unexpected. She stood beside me. She took responsibility with me, not for me, and helped fix the situation step by step. She didn't shield me from consequences, but she didn't let me face them alone either. And in that moment, I understood something I've been too afraid to admit. Love isn't a weakness. It's strength shared. As the crisis passed and life settled again, I found myself standing in the same office, in the same golden light, but feeling like a different man. Not because my problems were gone, but because I wasn't carrying them alone anymore. And this time, when I looked at her, I didn't look away. If this story has touched your heart so far, don't forget to engage with the video. Like, share, and let us know your thoughts. Stories like these remind us we're never truly alone in our struggles. There was no dramatic confession, no cinematic moment where everything changed instantly. Just a quiet understanding that had grown over time. A realization that sometimes love doesn't arrive when life is perfect. It arrives to help you survive when it's not. I never stopped being a struggling father. I never stopped worrying about the future. But I stopped believing that I had to face it all by myself. And maybe that was enough. Special requests. Comment, second chances are real. If you believe people deserve love even in their hardest moments. Because in the end, life didn't give me everything I wanted. It didn't magically erase my struggles or rewrite my past. But it gave me something I never thought I deserved. A chance to be seen, to be understood, and to slowly, carefully learn how to love without fear again. And sometimes that's the most powerful story of all.